Hey guys, so I'm just continuing to process this meat down. You can tell muscle separations are still going on here, and it's good to get to separate all this stuff down. I could have left this as one big piece, but you know, the stuff in between there, this stuff's all going to make your venison taste pretty gamey and pretty nasty. And you know, that's a nice little piece of trim. This, I mean, there's a tiny bit of meat on there. I'm not going to mess with that. That's pretty small stuff. But that's where that piece of meat was. That's where that other muscle separation was. And that, taking that off of there, allows me to get rid of this silver skin and some of these veins and some of this fat, which is going to make the venison taste a lot better. Even if you grind it up and stuff, I mean, it's just better to get rid of this stuff. I don't know if you've ever made a piece of jerky or something and accidentally left a little piece of venison fat on there, but like I said earlier, it tastes absolutely horrible. So this piece is close, but still not quite what I want. So I'm just going to kind of carve this off of here. This is a tiny bit of dry stuff. It's you could probably leave this on, especially if you're going to take it in somewhere. Most of the times when I take my what they call trim in to a place to have done, they are quite surprised at how meticulous I am in getting rid of this stuff. But that's just the way I am. That's the way I like to clean up this venison. Clean up the wild game. It just tastes so much better. Now here once again, I think this piece is okay actually, even though there's all this silver skin on there. Like I said, when they go through the grinder, the stuff will get caught in the grinding part, and then they can remove it at that time. If I were to grind it at home, I'd probably go ahead and split this and get rid of that. There's actually a big tendon right there. A little bit more here. Okay, I feel pretty good about this. Nice little piece of trim right there, or like I said, stew meat. Okay, this is the muscle that we have for our steak. This is steak right here. You can kind of tell the difference. This would be a small, what I call a football roast. This still needs to be trimmed, obviously. But you can see how it's got, this piece has all this tendon and stuff in here. So this is not going to be as tender. You can see the tendon in there. Not going to be as tender a cut of meat. But if you start cutting into a piece of meat that's just beautiful clean like that, then you know that's your steak, and they're on the hind quarters. You might find a tiny bit on the front quarters. Sometimes I cheat, make steaks. You know, anytime you find something that's just solid, beautiful meat like that, that's going to be a steak. So you got to start somewhere. So I started right down here on the end. Looks like this needs to be trimmed a tiny bit. Sometimes it's easier once you've sliced it a little bit into smaller chunks to get some of these real small pieces of silver skin off, rather than trying to work on the whole big piece of meat at once. So generally you want to try to cut across the grain. This little piece, however, I think I'm going to cut with the grain, just to try to make it a little more uniform piece. And that's a technique called butterflying. So now I've got a little bigger piece. Needs to be cut just a little bit more. This one's a little tougher because it's, like I said, it's that little end piece, and I cut it in half, which is, that's okay. That's still a little steak there. So now here's a little bigger piece. I'm going to butterfly cut this one. And this meat is half frozen right now because, like I said, it's pretty chilly outside. That's a nice little butterfly chop. Once again, I cut just a little too far, but that's all right. So now the rest of this, I like my steaks thin cut. I like to only put them on the barbecue for 3 minutes or so on each side. Cut that little piece off. Now, once in a while in these steaks, you are going to come across a little blood vessel like this. Now for me, I want that out of there. Even if I have to sacrifice some of this good meat. The reason it's so good is because I've cut some of this stuff out of there. So that's fine with me to waste a little bit like that. So that's a nice piece. Beautiful piece of meat right there. Tiny little bit of silver skin. I'll just barely whack a little bit of that off of there. Now you can see, no matter what you do, see if I can find it. Maybe it came off. Oh, there it is. No matter what you do, I mean, you're dealing with an animal that you just, got out in the woods and stuff and brought it inside. Anyway, there's going to be a little bit of hair on it. So that's why at the very end, when I'm all done, I'm going to rinse all this meat completely off. So here we go. I've got my bigger fillet knife here. I'm just going to cut a nice big steak out of this. You can tell the grain is running this way, so I'm going across grain. These are beautiful steaks. I've been working on this, I think, probably for maybe a half hour, maybe a tiny bit longer, and the meat in there is still ice cold. So I'm not worried about it, about the time that it may be sitting in a room temperature room. Nice and cold. Okay. So that's the last semi-good piece, or regular piece, a good sized piece. Throw a little of that away. Trim a tiny bit of this fat off. Now this one, let's see, kind of an irregular shape. Try to make a steak out of it somehow. Some sort of little chop. Just because it doesn't look perfect doesn't mean it's not going to taste awesome. So there you go. I'm going to, little piece of trim. I'm going to trim these up just a tiny bit more. You can tell. Actually that one's, pretty good looking. Some of these might need just a little bit of trimming. And then once we get all these pieces trimmed, I'll show you the wrapping that I do. Hey guys, so now what I've done is I've totally rinsed off the meat that would fit in my colander. Anyway, I rinsed off the roast and the trim. I still got the steaks sitting, so after I'm done with this, I'll go with the steaks. But I rinsed all, if there was any little bit of hair or, then you can kind of look at it and see if you want to do a little bit better job of trimming or something. Anyway, all this meat's pretty good. This is a nice big roast. Like I said, I'm going to be butchering a cow this year, or a steer, so I'm not going to do really any hamburger or stew meat or anything like that. It's going to be mostly roasts and steaks. But if sometime during the year I feel like having some stew meat, I can take one of these roasts and cube it up, and there I have my stew meat. So anyway, here, this is what I'll do. I just do a nice freezer wrap. I'll double wrap it. And I'm not As you can see, I'm not real pretty with this, but this is what I do. So I've already got some paper cut in certain lengths or certain sizes, and so I've already prepped that. So this is the way I wrapped it the first time. Now I'm going to wrap it the other way. So there's that. Roast 13. Now I'm going to grab another piece here. Once in a while you run into a nice piece like this that you could make chops out of, or whatever you want to do, but it's just a nice piece of meat here, and I don't want to make trim out of that. It's just too nice of a piece. So I've got that. I've got a little piece of roast there. All this would be real good in a crock pot, or like I said, if I wanted to cube it up. A little smaller package, but that's okay. It's just, for the most part, it's just the wife and me. The bigger packages are okay too, because it's good to have leftovers. So this 1/4, I had my son helping me, but I think it's going to have all together taken over an hour to do. We're going to go back out hunting in a couple of hours, so I don't want to get started on another one. But even if I were to get started on another one, all my stuff would get washed right now. All my knives get washed. Hot, obviously good soapy water. I think we got some trim left. I'm just going to put the trim in a freezer Ziploc, because it's going to go to the butcher or the guy that makes the sausage and stuff within this week. So I'm not worried about freezer burn or anything like that. I just don't want to keep it in the refrigerator. So anyway, I'm going to put this in there. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying, I'm going to wash everything. Everything is going to be completely washed in between quarters. Every time I do a quarter or a back strap, I usually will do 2 back straps before I wash everything, but everything's going to get washed. New butcher paper put down, I mean just everything. Table washed, because obviously you saw that that big quarter kind of slipped off the butcher paper once in a while. That's a nice piece of meat, super clean. I don't think I'm going to make that trim. I think we're going to have another big, huge roast package. Actually, we're probably going to have 2 roast packages out of that. And add to my roast package. Take some trim back out. That's a nice piece. There, now I'll have two things of trim, or 2 things of roast, 2 packages of roast. So that'll go in the freezer. I can add to that when I do my next hind quarter. So there's going to be a nice roast. This it was kind of all bunched together like that other big football roast, but there was some fat and stuff, so I just kind of separated the meat a little bit and got some of the fat out. Okay, well this is the same process, obviously, for, I'm going to put another piece of tape on that one. Obviously the same process for the steaks, just depends on how much steaks you want in there. Just wrap them up and freeze them. I'll take you over here and we'll show you, or I'll bring it here. But this is how much we wasted on the quarter, on 1/4. Now that's not a lot of meat, I don't think. I mean, it's mostly just gristle and stuff, so I think we did pretty good. And the bone was pretty bare when we got done. So that's how I process 1/4 of venison. Just take it slow and just separate the muscles and just dive into it. Anyway, hope you liked the video.